So this is part 3 of how I make a drum cover, and this is going to be the mixing process to making a drum cover. So during this video I'll go into how I mix the track, and hopefully we'll use the final product to make the video. I hope you enjoy this segment. Here we go. Okay, so now we're going to do the mix of Dorian Rock Pile. And let's take a look at this. The first thing I'm going to do is open up the mixer, make sure the fader is down a little bit, and we're going to turn this on and give you a little taste of the mix the way I did the mix. Okay? Now the key point here is this is the way I did the mix. So here's the mix. And let's go through some of the finer points. So let's mute the mix channel. Now first off, everything is going through my mix bus. I want to make this clear. So the mix bus is what really is the last bit of compression and limiting that happens to my drum mixes. So let me give you a listen without the mix bus. So watch what happens when I actually start to bring the mix bus in to the level. So here's the level where we're at right now. This is the bus compressor. This is the limiter, the final piece of it. And right there, most guys just use a bus compressor and a limiter. But I like to also add some tape compression. Now, settings are chosen for what I hear in my ear. So there's lots of different settings I use for this. Let me say it to you this way. That tape compression glues the mix together. That's the way I look at it. So for this song, I thought the better one was 900. But there's a lot of different settings, and every once in a while I'll start with a setting, a preset, and then I'll just start messing with it. For this one, I went with a pretty standard one. And the last piece is this Oxford compressor, which basically can dial in the mix different directions. So if I want to bring the mix out a little bit more without raising the fader, I use this curve button. Alright? So that's the mix bus. Let's mute that for a second. And let's look at the kick drum. So that's my kick sound. Here's what it sounds like flat. That's what it sounds like with just the mic. That's the EQ. Little boost around 80. A lot of the schmaltz is pulled out. Then I put the transient designer on it. A lot of attack. Less attack. A lot of sustain. You hear the front head when you put a lot of sustain in it. That's pulling the front head off. And the last is the Neve channel, where I have my EQ, my gate, which takes the snare out a little bit, my limiter, gives it presence, and my EQ setting, which is really, that EQ is really what makes that sound the way it does. And really my mix is kick, snare, and overhead, so let's listen to the snare. Snare channel, I take the schmaltz out between 3 and usually 500. I pull down. How much I want to take schmaltz out of this snare is really up to me. It's the hunk. That's the snare with nothing on it. Go back to 1 again. Snare mic. Put the schmaltz in. Take it out. Here's my other EQ, the Pultec Legacy EQ, which has boost and attenuation in it. I did use this on another video I did for Ask Earl Anything that came out, an Adam AR drummer question. So I really get into what this is about. If you guys have questions about the plugins, I can do the one on the plugin just alone. Get into that a little bit. I start with presets and then I do other things to it, just like this. This plugin starts with the attack and the sustain at 0. I rarely touch the gain, every once in a while, not very often. But that is a big part of my sound. I mean, that snare just punches right through. A lot of guys say, how do you get that snare sound? Transient designer, that's a big part of it. Last part is the compression. Really popping. All right. Overheads. I've gotten into taking the schmaltz out of the overheads too, that honky sound, and it makes my snare pop even more, so that's why I do that. Pultec EQ again for both channels, same settings, and the Ren compressor. I use the compressor, threshold, and gain to taste. It always comes out to being that. This I rarely touch. And I play a little bit with the EQ. Sometimes it just goes without it. That's the normal EQ with it, nothing on it. That's with the schmaltz taken at. So, and then the tom tracks. It has to be a tom playing, but I have a gate. Without the gate, you have all kinds of noise going through it. With the gate, cuts all the noise out. That's what the gate does. That was one of the ones that snuck through. I don't really spend a lot of time in this, so every once in a while one will sneak through. But I try to leave it for just the toms. There's not a lot of toms in this. It's mostly a groove song, so that's pretty much what I'm going for here. And then the whole track. Pull the... So that's the mix for Dorian Rock Pile. Standard reverbs were used. My plate, my gated reverb on the snare a little bit, and the toms, and my snare reverb. So these are all standard, and I did engage an EQ for the reverbs to push it back a little bit in the imaging. So, well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little lesson on how I mix my drum covers. Have a great day.